Trustee Quiroga, will you present your candidate for the honorary degree?
Trustee Scott, I have the honor and privilege to present to you Billy Starr for the honorary degree, Doctor of Humane Letters.
Billy Starr, innovator, philanthropist, Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa. Billy Starr, as a newly minted alumnus of the University of Denver, with no clear or concrete plans for your future, you chose the path of many young dreamers. You would backpack around the world, experience life and the richnesses of other cultures, and defer career decisions until later. The future could wait. You were young, energetic, curious, and eager for adventure. It was not, however, to be. Your mother, Betty, would suddenly be diagnosed with melanoma and would succumb to the disease at age 49. Abruptly, your world changed, and with it, your perspective. In grief, you set yourself a challenge. You would recruit your friends and hike the length of the Appalachian Trail. Along the way, you found the leader within. You set the pace, organized supply drops at post offices along the way, and set everyone's sight on the finish line. Through bad weather, setbacks, and discouragement, you urged your group on, both emotionally and physically. You reached your goal, and life went on. You pursued careers as a reporter and a publicist, and continued your athletic interests as Babson College squash coach. It wasn't until 1980, however, that your life purpose would be revealed. You made plans to bicycle to the Cape with friends, a fun, challenging outing. One of those aha moments that occasionally comes to some of us, you realized it could be something much more. And you and your cycling buddies challenged yourselves to raise money for the fight against cancer as part of the ride. By Sunday of that weekend, the rudiments of what would become your life's work, your greatest passion, were set in motion. Capitalizing on America's interest in physical fitness, our innate competitiveness, and our desire to passionately support causes that matter to us, you began the Pan Mass Challenge. By doing so, you have created a vehicle to enable all of us to become your partners in a fight against cancer. 34 years later, that small weekend ride with friends has turned into an annual event that draws 5,500 cyclists from 36 different states and 8 countries. You have raised and contributed $414 million to cancer research. And have raised more money than any other athletic fundraising event in the country. Hailed as an innovator, you have seen your format replicated by others, and the Pan Mass Challenge acclaimed as a model for fundraising success. Out of personal grief, you have fashioned a powerful mission of hope. You have encouraged the ordinary among us to do extraordinary things by creating a mechanism to effect change. You have inspired cancer survivors and families of those that we've lost to the fight, that one day it will be won. You have empowered us to believe and have showed us the way. We are profoundly grateful.
By the power conferred upon the trustees of Salem State University by the Board of Higher Education, it is my pleasure to award you the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto appertaining.
On behalf of the university community, I want to thank both of our honorary degree recipients for their service and contributions that so enrich our service. Congratulations. Please now join me in welcoming Salem State University honorary degree recipient, Dr. Billy Starr, Salem State University's 2014 graduate commencement speaker. Dr. Starr.
Thank you, President Meserve, the board, all administrators. It's a great honor to be here today. Before I begin, I wouldn't be me if I didn't take this opportunity to say, if my words move you today, and even if they don't, there's still opportunity to register for this year's Pan Mass Challenge, pmc.org. From what I gather, while we're all here, you may have some time on your hands coming up, a little vacation. At any rate, I become a little self-conscious anytime I tell anyone how to lead their life. Nevertheless, I'm going to offer up a simple guiding principle, though it is without doubt a challenging one. If you have a passion for a particular pursuit, never give up that dream. Those pursuits that capture your heart and soul are seldom dealt out randomly by life. You have to find it yourself and figure out a way to seize it. Some people can look back on their lives and know exactly how they got to where they are, and I'm one of them. But it was 5 years into the Pan Mass Challenge before I began to fully grasp my own evolution. What I do today, and much of the person I've become, can be traced back to my mother's death at age 49, some 40 years ago. I had just returned to Boston following my own graduation ceremonies in Colorado and walked in on my father crying in his bedroom, having just found out that my mother's cancer diagnosis would be terminal. It was the first time ever I remember seeing my dad cry, and my father's tears would carry me like a raft into uncharted waters that would lead me through an extraordinary range of emotions and ultimately assure the personal growth that I could not then have imagined. It was not in any sense an easy ride. For 6 years following her death in June 1974, I tried unsuccessfully to balance that sense of loss with what I thought should be the natural progression of adulthood. I earned a master's degree in education and was fortunate enough to land jobs in journalism, sales, and public relations in a time like today of economic recession. Still, while I found jobs, I was committed to none of them. But between the spring of 1976 and 1977, you all remember that, I undertook 2 adventures that lit a fire in me that have yet to be extinguished. The first was a 400-mile hike through Maine and New Hampshire on the Appalachian Trail. And the second was a one-day, 120-mile bike ride from my dad's house in Newton to Provincetown. Both events were similar in that they required planning, endurance, and inevitably a sense of humor. On these pillars, I found my calling, met thousands of kindred spirits, and built a business that serves a vast public need. We adults have to assume a lot of roles to succeed, and too often, the nurturing of our souls gets short shrift. After the first PMC in September 1980, I realized I'd found the way to nurture mine, and others as well. The letters I received from those who participated in the inaugural 1980 PMC confirmed that these people were seeking to fulfill what they saw as their obligation to society as well as to themselves. I'd found my way. I recognized that philanthropy, to give of oneself, to persevere, and sometimes suffer for others, not only reap benefits for society, but it made me and others feel good about ourselves. It was a win-win proposition. I'd created a route across Massachusetts where this compassion that exists in all of us could find a home. Once I understood my role, kind of a Pied Piper of that compassion, I did the following. I set ambitious goals. I involved my family and friends in my vision. I shared my progress with them, and I put my ideas on paper and tested them in the field. Sometimes your work will test your commitment in ways you could never imagine. My big test came in 1984. The PMC was 5 years old. That year, there were 366 riders, and we donated $155,000 to the Jimmy Fund. It should have been remembered as a year of triumph and progress, but it was also the year of our first rider fatality. The accident occurred Saturday, 35 miles along the route. As I arrived on bicycle to the accident scene, I saw the young man flailing uncontrollably in the ambulance as paramedics tended to his head injury. This head trauma would soon prove fatal. Over the course of that day, my staff and I were in touch with his family, the hospital, the police, the insurance companies, and the Jimmy Fund. While rumors circulated amongst the riders, most were unaware of the accident because this was a full 20 years before smartphones, and we had yet to assemble as a group. That same night, I conducted a brief ceremony acknowledging 15 cyclists who had ridden the PMC for all 5 years. In those days, I knew almost everybody and tended to ad-lib my speeches. I forgot to mention one deserving woman. Following the ceremony, she tearfully criticized me for being so insensitive. I bit my lip and said nothing because she had no way of knowing how distracted I was by the events of the day. But the point was clear to me. My actions had an impact on people, and no matter how carefully I planned, I could not completely control all the forces I had set in motion. The following day, I was informed that the young man had suffered irreversible brain damage and that later the family had made the painful decision to disconnect life support. That evening following the event, I returned home alone and disconsolate. I reflexively activated my answering machine. The voice greeting me was that of the deceased rider. He was a late registrant. Some experiences never leave. Sorry. He was a late registrant. He wanted me to know that he had all his pledge money collected. He looked forward to meeting me. And obviously, I came undone. 2 days later, I attended the wake and met the father who, in his grief, held me responsible for the tragedy. His other son, who had volunteered at the PMC to support his brother, stood by me during an emotional service. It was an intensely difficult period for me and the PMC, yet I never doubted our mission. That may sound obvious given the covenant magnitude of the PMC, but back then, the PMC was a small organization. Many of my staff was devastated by the loss and resigned their positions. We were vulnerable as individuals and as an organization. Most eventually changed their minds, but when bad things happen to good people, those in charge feel responsible, even if there was nothing they could have done. This August, the PMC will ride for the 35th time. We have now suffered 2 fatalities. The loss to those families is immeasurable, but what the PMC means to this region and our society can be measured. To date, more than 90,000 riders have ridden the PMC, and $414 million has been contributed to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and used to save lives and fund critical research. Our mission is too vital to be deterred. Cancer causes 1 out of every 4 deaths in the United States. In a war that now takes 565,000 Americans every year, there is, unfortunately, also collateral damage suffered by those who would attempt to help the afflicted. Triumph and tragedy often walk hand in hand in real life, just as in theater. To cope effectively, it is essential that you have a clear grasp of who you are and why you set out on a particular path. There's an enduring clarity of mind that becomes transcendent after you have ridden a bike 200 miles in the scorching heat of pouring rain to benefit cancer research. There may be complex or distracting events going on simultaneously, but the mission always rises above the fog of confusion. We hear a lot about overnight success. There's no such thing. But we also, particularly in these trying economic times, hear a lot about failure. Society tends to rush to judgment by proclaiming winners and losers in neat packages. But life is not really like that. The deeds that comprise a person's life do not bundle up so neatly. I have found that failure, more accurately, not achieving one's goals, is often the best teacher and motivator. Most success was born of failure. Ideas evolve. They are not all hatched. All progress scrapes and claws before it glides and soars. And that is why a genuine passion for your work is so vital. It's what keeps you going in the face of inevitable naysayers and all the other obstacles on the road ahead. My road has led me here today, and I'm honored to share the moment with so many future stars as they embark on new paths. Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations on climbing a significant hill on your ride through life. You have overcome one obstacle of what will be many, but each obstacle you overcome brings you one step closer to the gliding and the soaring. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Starr, for sharing your experiences and conveying them in a message that I am hopeful is inspiring to everyone in this room, particularly our graduates, but I think you have just touched each and every one of us. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for the great leadership that you have shown in philanthropy and guiding others to join your cause. Thank you.